Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
Oh man, I have been waiting to do a show like this for quite some time. And honestly, there is no better person to talk about conspiracies, not because he necessarily believes in it, but because he's really good about giving you both sides of the story and knowing the history behind a lot of this. I'm super excited for today's show. We have Jake Shapiro and Richie Carni sitting down. Richie and I have no idea what we are about to talk about.
This could go anywhere.
Jake is about to give us all of the insight that we need to know to debate some of these conspiracies. So with that being said, welcome into Coffee Break, as I will pass it along to our very own Jake Shapiro.
Okay, Rachel, Richie, the year is 1982. And eventually, disgraced owner of the Clippers, Donald Sterling, has just admitted to tanking. He said, quote, "We've got to bite the bullet. We can win by losing." And that time, the NBA draft order was decided by who had the worst record, with the number 1 and number 2 pick being decided by a coin flip, i.e. tanking was a lot more certain back then than it is now, where, you know, the Spurs had a 14% chance at getting Victor Wembanyama as one of the worst teams in the NBA. So league officials were not happy with the Clippers, particularly, and then also the Rockets, who had tanked for Hakeem Olajuwon in 1984. They wanted brand new commissioner David Stern to do something. Without the rest of the league's approval, Stern created the NBA draft lottery. It was the first draft lottery in sports. The way it worked is all 7 non-playoff teams had an equal 14.3% chance at the number 1 pick in 1985.
Real quick, I hate the lottery. I hate the NBA draft lottery, so I'm just going to put that out there right now. I'm sorry. I just felt the need to say that.
I'm not a fan of it. And as someone who was -8 in 1985, I feel very confident that I'm going to be able to speak on authority here.
Okay, so this pick in 1985 was like 100% certain. It was like Wemby in this last draft. It was going to be Patrick Ewing. Right. He's a dominant 7-footer, 240-pounder. 4 years at Georgetown, took the Hoyas to the Final Four final game 3 different times. Total package, so much so that during the draft coverage, they didn't even list his strengths. They just said, "Are you kidding?" So this dude was like 100% certain to be the number 1 pick. And then for some further context, you know, the league right now, except for Nikola Jokic, is pretty much run by guards. Back then, 25 of the first 28 MVPs in league history were big men. Yep. Larry Bird had just become that year the first guy who is not a center to repeat as an MVP. So Ewing is going to change the franchise. He's wherever he goes, it's ticket sales, it's playoff runs, Absolutely. It's TV ratings, it's relevance. Sports Illustrated wrote at the time, he's the most recognized athlete ever to enter a major professional league. So the professional league in question we're talking about is the NBA. And I want you guys to think about the NBA back then like we now think about the MLS. It had an attendance problem. The franchises were in such a bad shape in 1980, just 5 years before, that 6 of the 23 teams were on the brink of disbanding. It was basically over for the NBA. 75% of the league, according to a 1982 LA Times article, was on drugs actively while playing in NBA games.
Okay.
So the NBA had just signed a 4-year, $91.9 million TV deal that expired in 1986. This TV deal was really essential because it took the NBA Finals off tape delay. The NBA Finals from 79 to 81 would be broadcast at 11:30 p.m. at night. So the league is in really, really bad shape, needs all the help, right? So none of these finals that have happened in the last decade included the New York Knicks, which is obviously the biggest media market in the NBA. They just had their worst season in 20 years. Bernard King missed almost the entire year. Bill Cartwright missed almost the entire season. And Madison Square Garden was like empty this entire Knicks season. The New York Times, before this draft lottery, says, quote, "There's a strong feeling among league officials and television advertising executives that the NBA will benefit most if Ewing winds up in a Knicks uniform." So on May 12th, 1985, the lottery takes place on TV, first time that had happened, during halftime of the 76ers-Celtics playoff game, live from Waldorf Astoria in NYC. The NBA was focused on a fair drawing and wanted to keep the integrity of the event. They picked a clear ball with envelopes inside. Ping pong balls were not chosen, that we've come accustomed to now, because it was too risky of a bet for the NBA. Quote, "We were afraid of having the thing pop open and the balls flying out," says the head of league PR at the time, Brian McIntyre. So this is what happens during the actual lottery now, okay? So that's all the background. Stern started by explaining the process, and you guys can watch this video right now. A white-haired man from the accounting firm of Ernest and Winey, Jack Wagner, tossed 7 envelopes into a globe one at a time, pausing for the briefest of moments, perhaps to adjust his arm. Before dumping in the 4th, which bangs off the interior of the drum, it creases the corner. The NBA head of security, Jack Joyce, spins the drum 5 times. Stern exhaled visibly, reaching in for the first choice that would determine where Ewing would land. Stern fumbled around for a moment, grasped and then turned the envelopes, then lifted out the lucky one, which just happened to be the one with the creased corner. It was for the New York Knicks. Quote, "We were very pleased with the lottery," Stern told the press after the event. "The interest was great. People are talking about the lottery instead of drugs, unauthorized franchise movings, or anything else." So the league was just happy that there was a focus on the lottery. Any questions?
No
Nope.
questions.
Okay. Well, it's time to put on the conspiracy cap. And you guys can tell me whether I'm capping or not.
Okay.
So the conspiracy, a New York tabloid reported a curious fact just a day after. Ernest and Winey just happened to be also auditing for the firm of Golf and Western, which happened to own the New York Knicks.
One question. Where did you get the pink cowboy hat?
My wife's bachelorette party.
No, yeah, it's not that. It's not the hat. It's the glasses for one. And like traditionally
he has normal
speaking,
glasses like that.
the tinfoil hat is the conspiracy theory headwear of choice.
Yes.
But we've gone in such a different direction here. I don't know if it makes it more credible or less, but you have my attention.
You have my attention.
Exactly.
As
I got to keep my credibility as a serious journalist, Richie. So everyone needs to know I'm playing a character right now. So there is speculation that the envelope containing the Knicks logo was frozen beforehand. That's one of the theories, enabling David Stern to recognize it when he selected it. We didn't do any regression analysis. We just decided to throw a bunch of envelopes in a circular bin. That's what Stern says. He said he was nervous on camera because he had never done TV before. He claims that he thought about what would happen if the Knicks won. We were totally focused on not tripping up ourselves, is basically what he said. He didn't really care about who won. And he declines to take credit for the lottery's ongoing success. It wasn't planned. It wasn't programmed, is the way Stern says about it about 30 years later. So that's one theory, that the lottery envelope was frozen. The second, more popular...
Frozen, like as in it was put in a freezer, it was a different temperature, and he could feel the difference?
Yes. So when he fumbled around, he could pick the one that was
the cold envelope. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's theory number 1. Theory number 2 is that when the accountant from Ernest and Whitney, again, the same firm used by Golf and Western, who owned the New York Knicks, inserted the 7 envelopes into the glass drum, some have claimed that one of them, the 4th one, banged off the side of the drum to crease the corner, thereby making it easier for Stern to determine which envelope to choose. The envelope, of course, containing the Knicks logo. According to this theory, as the drum was being spun by NBA security director Joyce, Stern was watching the envelopes closely and then opened the drum, took a deep breath, and reached in and selected the envelope with the bent corner and the Knicks logo. This has never been confirmed, or sometimes it's never even been denied.
Well, all I can think of is like, you can easily, I mean, we all do it when we're watching the like big screen, right? Where they put the cup or the ball underneath the cup and you have to like watch with your eyes.
Yes, I'm
if
great
you
at that
know
game.
which one it is, you're going to be able to follow it regardless.
Yes. Well, okay. I've got it all laid out in front of me, and I will just say this. We have street performers and grifters in America right now that fool people on the street with sleight of hand magic and 3-card Monty and all that.
Time.
And they're doing it for loose change in people's pockets. If you're telling me that the money and the forces behind this are the entirety of the National Basketball Association's kind of upper echelon, and you're doing it to benefit Market One in the United States, the concrete jungle, absolutely, this could be true. Now, I actually think the frozen element is more reasonable than the bent corner being a conspiracy, because in my mind, when there's that much on the line, leaving it up to the person dropping it in the ball to make sure that it does, in fact, bend the corner enough for them to see is a pretty big risk. Unless they had the card taped to the side of the envelope that would guarantee it, that feels like a risk or something almost incidental. If I was going to say it, it would be a marking or a You know how they have it in cards where it's not a bent corner, but it's a corner that's been bent that leaves an indentation line. That's probably what I would say, other than, hey, make sure you bank that one off the side before it goes in the bowl. But I'm just I'll cut to the chase. 1,000% this draft lottery was rigged. 1,000%.
I wasn't going to say that, but okay.
1,000%. Rachel, we think the lottery's been rigged in the last 10 years.
Oh, that's why I hate the lottery. I think that it's all.
What you're talking about a can't miss prospect coming out of college. And like Jake's kind of history lesson in the beginning, the NBA was in bad shape. Bird and Magic kind of saved the NBA.
But, which is happening at the exact same time as this, by the way.
Bird and Magic are in the process of saving the NBA from an image standpoint. But you need something further than that. And you had major markets in LA and Boston, but you don't have the biggest market in New York. So if I am a business owner, like the commissioner of the NBA and all these governors, absolutely, we need New York if we're going to be long-term viable. And that's how you do it.
All I can think too is just like, was there any money involved? Or is it
of
simply
course.
just for the case of we want the NBA to be relevant?
I think that it's more involved with the NBA being relevant than it is, because New York doesn't have to pay. They already bring enough to the table to say our eyeballs, our demographic, and our population size are big enough that you need us more than we need you.
Fair.
Like, we want to have a basketball team, and that's great, but you need us to be successful because of who we are. And let's not forget, for anybody that watched the Winning Time documentary on HBO, which is around this same time period, there's already major speculation that was kind of represented in that show that the finals MVP, the year that the Lakers won the title, was supposed to go to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, but it was given to Magic Johnson instead as the young new face of the Lakers while Kareem was going out.
Are you opening up another conspiracy theory?
I'm just telling you. There's multiple conspiracy theories already coming out of the NBA during this time period. So I don't know why that one wouldn't be true.
Fair enough.
And listen, just as a rule of thumb, I think if you don't believe in every conspiracy theory, that makes you a rationally, objective, level-headed human being. But if you don't believe in any conspiracy theories, something's wrong with you. Like, you think the government and the rest of the world is batting 1,000 and you're getting the truth on everything, you're crazy. I'm not saying that there's lizard people under DIA. I'm not saying Jay-Z and Beyonce run the Illuminati, but I'm saying some of it has got to be true.
We work in sports. There's too many things that we know that believe us to believe any of these things. So that being said, Jake, is there anything else that we need to add into this?
So there's a couple quotes that might back or sway either of you.
Okay.
So Stan Kaskin, who was the GM of the Hawks at the time, recalled attending a college tournament in Hawaii a few months before the lottery. Quote, I was sitting with a couple NBA guys, and I remember one high-ranking team executive, who I will not name, was 1,000,000% convinced this was going to happen. He's going to the Knicks. He kept saying, he's going to the Knicks. It's all arranged. I didn't believe him at the time. The president of Madison Square Garden, Jack Cumpy, joked after the lottery, hey, I told them how to fix it 60 days ago. You call up Ernest and Winey and you say, if we don't get Ewing, you're fired. David Stern said after the lottery, right after the lottery, if people want to say that the lottery is fixed, that's fine, as long as they spell our name right. That means they're interested in us. That's terrific. On top of that, there's former Commissioner Larry O'Brien, who came right before Stern, who said, quote, here's the thing about David. He's smart enough to pull that off. He's also smart enough to not do it. David Falk, who is the agent for Michael Jordan, Patrick Ewing, said, it's plausible that it was rigged. So those are the big quotes.
Okay, so first of all, that just makes me think 100% it's rigged. My biggest argument against people who say that the NFL is rigged is I'm like, no one has ever come out and said that it's rigged. You've never had a player, a player that had something go wrong, etc., or coach or GM or anybody of that nature be like, yes, it is rigged. When there's already
people on the inside
who are saying that, like you said, or David Stern being like, as long as they're talking about the NBA, it has to be.
The difference that I agree with that you're articulating is like when people say that NFL officiating is rigged and all that, it's coming from upset fans who are on the wrong end of gambling.
Never heard a player,
things,
coach,
or
anybody.
tinfoil hatters. But with the NBA, from the referee,
Tim Donaghy.
So from that experience, it's coming from people internally. Have you ever been 1,000,000% confident on anything, Rachel? If there's somebody there's a league executive on the inside who is saying, I am 1,000,000% confident, and that's somebody who would have access to inside information.
Mm-hmm.
What does he have to benefit from lying? What fire spreading
Agreed.
does that do? So like this to me feels like the equivalent of when you get like former CIA, ex-Black Ops people that like tell you like how ugly and how weird things are behind the scenes within government or within that. This is exactly like that. Like I said, there were conspiracy theories centered around Michael Jordan and his whole ascension of the NBA, like the Air movie, and all of that. So this is a league that has been embroiled with conspiracy over the course of the last 40, 50 plus years. And there's been enough major examples to show that, like other sports leagues, they will follow the money to establish legitimacy. There's no reason to believe that it's not. I think the biggest 3-card Monty sleight of hand that you can pull on someone is showing them something that is deliberately one thing and convincing and letting them convince themselves it's another. That's the ultimate con.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no reason to believe that the motivations aren't there, that it would be that way.
Okay, so Richie and I both agree that this is 100% rigged. I am like fascinated by these quotes that are coming out. That's what sealed the deal for me. Jake, I'm curious on your, well, first of all, is there anything else that we need to know before we submit our final answer, which I think we've already have? But I'm also curious to just hear your thoughts.
So what Richie said about the CIA conspiracy with people coming out later. What's interesting is people were saying it at the time. They weren't dispelling it at the time.
And that I think goes toward human nature, right? Like people, when you've got a secret, it's hard to keep it for 100%. A lot of people. And you need to, whether it's to clear your own conscience, you need to tell somebody, or you're using it as kind of a manipulative tool or to kind of like pat yourself on the back a little bit. Human nature makes it hard for things to stay underneath. Once the lid has been opened, it's hard to keep things in Pandora's box.
Mm-hmm.
So years later, all the quotes from the same people you've just heard start changing to it wasn't rigged. So Stan Kaskin, who was the executive you heard from that sealed it for Rachel, quote, "It's just not that easy to keep conspiracy quiet." He said when he was the president of the Dodgers. "In my experience, it's not that easy to keep anything in this business quiet. If more than one person knows about it, a frozen card with David felt around until he felt the cold one. Can you imagine on national TV? I don't think the NBA office is that smart." So there's David Stern's reaction, down the line before he passed away was along the lines of either combative to make jokes about it, but he would deny that there was any wrongdoings in that lottery. What is interesting, and this isn't a quote, but Bill Simmons, when he worked for ESPN, who's the league's biggest broadcast partner, was going to make a documentary about the 1985 NBA draft lottery. Before it published, he pulled the plug on it, saying, "I didn't want to piss the league off." And that is the last quote I've got. I've got one more thing to wrap it all up, but I'll give it back to you guys to decide.
On that note, by the way, what you said of like, I don't think, what was the explanation? I don't think the league office was that smart, or that, by the way, is the number one weak BS defense of anyone involved in a conspiracy theory is, you're giving us too much credit. Like, there's no way we could pull all these strings. Again, that's showing someone something that's completely different and convincing them that it's something else because you're pulling all the strings. Of course, you want people to think that you're not smart enough, vindictive enough, clever enough, whatever, to pull something off. It's such a weak defense of like, there's no way we could do that.
I like the voice you're getting. Your voice was so good.
We're only piloting a multi-billion-dollar organization, even if it wasn't worth that at the time. There's no way we have enough minds in here to make sure we get the outcome that we want. We'll leave it up to chance.
Merchandise sales went up 433% over the next 7 years in the NBA.
Exactly.
Okay.
In fact, there were people, for the record, it's while we're on conspiracy, was there not a bunch of people who thought that there was conspiracy around the Spurs getting Wembanyama in the lottery because Greg Popovich would have had 3 of the greatest big men of their eras back to back to back?
Yep. No,
so,
agreed.
and this is where I come back to the aftermath, which is Patrick Ewing goes on to be a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest basketball players to ever live, 11-time All-Star.
Maybe the greatest Knick ever.
Yeah, takes the Knicks to 2 NBA finals, made the Knicks relevant in the 80s and 90s. It's between him and some guys in the 70s. It's clearly Patrick Ewing's one of the greatest Knicks of all time.
He's on the Mount Rushmore.
For sure.
The question is, so if you guys truly believe the 1985 NBA draft lottery is rigged, and I'm already hearing about future lotteries that you guys think were rigged, the Denver Nuggets perspective on this is the 2003 NBA draft where they had the worst record in basketball. Cleveland Cavaliers and them had the same odds to get the first pick. Of course, the Cavs get the first pick. The Nuggets fall to 3. Cavs end up with LeBron James, and the Nuggets end up with Carmelo Anthony. Are we looking in a world where there may have been a conspiracy where the Denver Nuggets did not end up with LeBron James? And I'm just, again, that's the conspiracy, but that's up to you guys to decide.
I'm okay with that conceptually because, again, it follows the same blueprint. I'd have to really go back and study what the advantage from the league's perspective was to have him land in Cleveland versus a place like Denver, it's not like you're talking about LA, New York, or Boston, whatever. You're talking about Denver versus Colorado versus Ohio, Denver versus Cleveland. But
well, for LeBron, that's him returning home.
No. Oh, I thought you were talking about in the draft.
Yeah, LeBron returns home to Cleveland because he was from Akron. So the draft lottery, if you believe it was rigged, it was for the NBA to get LeBron to stay on his hometown team.
I could see the storyline fitting better in Cleveland than it would be in
But
Denver.
Is there anything that we'd have to go back and watch that draft lottery?
I also think when it comes to LeBron, I don't know if the draft lottery may have been a mechanism for it, but I think there was so much of LeBron's career arc that was been and possibly still might be controlled by the shoe companies. I think LeBron's entire career arc was puppeted by Nike behind the scenes. Him going home to Cleveland, doing that, him leaving to go to a bigger market in South Beach to win championships, and then eventually to return home back to Cleveland and bring them their first title. I think a lot of that has to do with the shoe companies needing, they don't need, just like, wasn't that a Melo thing? Wasn't the whole Melo wanted to go to Chicago, but
careful because this isn't reported. This is something we know, Richie, but there is rumors that Melo did not end up in Chicago
this is
when
all
he wanted
speculation.
out for the Nuggets.
Yeah, this is all speculation.
Derrick Rose was with Adidas and Melo was with Jordan, and they didn't want to split the market. That's the rumor.
Yeah. Was that the shoe company made a decision of no, we'd actually rather have you in New York, allegedly, versus Chicago because they don't need help in Chicago with Rose and the Jordan brand.
Well, let's be honest. Conspiracies are definitely fun because there are many ways that you can go about it and holes that you can dig in. Huge shout out to Jake because he did a great job. Richie, as always, I appreciate you for diving into all of this stuff with me as well. And to all of you, let us know in the comments if you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, wherever it is, which side of the conspiracy you believe in. Was it rigged or was it not rigged? And let us know what you think about the LeBron James one because it definitely does have an interesting tie to things. Thank you guys so much for hanging with us here on Coffee Break, though. We love it. And let us know any conspiracies you want us to dive into next. And we'll see you guys next time. Bye, everybody.